What you have just seen is part of an astounding collection of psychic phenomena, demonstrations of the powers of the mind. Everything that your eyes will witness in this film is real. Nothing has been staged. There are no actors, only real people who may have found powers that lurk within us all. You may find this reality more difficult to believe than fiction. That is why we ask you to open your eyes, open your minds, and enter into a world that is truly beyond belief. ESP, psychokinesis, faith healing? Is that folklore, myth, or reality? There was a time a man could be beheaded for saying that the earth was not the center of the universe, or ridiculed if he suggested that diseases were caused by tiny, unseen animals. Today we accept those ideas unquestioningly, as we accept the fact that you can send color pictures and sound through the air, or that man can walk on the moon. Why can't we expand our beliefs to encompass other powers? Powers that exist even in the lowest forms of life. For instance, the simple microbes that have produced this yogurt, do they feel emotions? Do they feel love, hate, and hunger? Is it just human conceit that only man can feel emotions? Plants respond if you speak lovingly to them. Cleve Baxter, a seasoned professional in the use of electronic sensing devices, proved that. You know what he also proved? That yogurt gets hungry.
First, we have taken a small sample of the yogurt and put it in a glass vial, glass container. This container is included in a metal box that's shielding the yogurt from outside electromagnetic spectrum energies, electrical interference. The lead goes to the instrumentation, which in this particular case is not the conventional polygraph equipment, but we've switched over to electroencephalograph. Now, the electroencephalograph is instrumentation ordinarily used to monitor brain waves from humans. The thing that we found is that we can get a consistent and meaningful recording on the EEG from a yogurt sample, and the problem now, of course, was to build into the experiment a remote stimulus. Now, the remote stimulus that we've used in this particular case is to feed nutrient to a sample of the same yogurt located a considerable distance away in the same laboratory environment. These are the actual electrodes that are used during experimental runs, and they are made of silver wire mounted and attached to wires going into the shielded box and through a cable leading to the EEG. Now, The silver electrodes are immersed in the yogurt sample, and this is clamped into place. Now I'm going to take some of the nutrient and bring it into the syringe, which is milk, and I'm going to add the nutrient to the container of yogurt that I have in my hand. Now actually, some yogurt from the same batch is being tested in the shielded cage. And the expectation is rather interesting. Now, after adding the nutrient, in fact, it was about 10 or 15 seconds delay, we can get some additional reaction. The interesting part is, though, that the reward is being given not to the sample that's being tested, as you see here, but the sample that's being tested is reacting violently. We won't get into a philosophical discussion of whether this is a positive or a negative equivalent to emotion, but I think it's very, very interesting.
Somehow yogurt will just never seem the same again. Well, at least we've shown the possibility that lower forms of life can exhibit emotions. Now, what happens if the wee beasties get sick? Simple. You take them to a healer. And that brings us to Sister M. Justa Smith, a nun and highly respected biologist. Hardly a lady given to hysterical and unsupported claims. Sister Smith has done some very interesting work in microbes and faith healing. Yeah, faith healing. I know what you're probably thinking, but the facts are right here, and now right in front of your eyes.
I belong to a group of biochemists who believe that all illnesses are due to some malfunctioning enzyme. Now, if this be true, then any therapy, whether it be medicinal, physical, or paranormal, should affect the rate at which an enzyme reacts. In order to test this hypothesis, we want to determine whether or not a healer can affect a whole as well as a damaged enzyme.
Under strict laboratory procedure and control, 4 batches of enzyme are prepared. 1 set tested for activity and set aside. A second is weakened under ultraviolet light. Selections from the normal and weakened enzymes are placed in a powerful electromagnet and in the healing hands of Olga Worrell. Previous experiments have shown the hands of the average person have little or no effect on enzymic activity. However, in this series of experiments, both the magnet and Olga Worrell's hands produced matched activity in all samples.
There really is nothing supernatural, nor mysterious, nor occult about paranormal healing. It can be tested and measured and demonstrated in a scientific laboratory.
Now for the big time. We are going to move up to more complex organisms, humans. Maimonides Hospital in Brooklyn is a well-known research and medical facility. It is also the haunt of one Dr. Stanley Krippner. The good doctor works with ordinary people who have no previous record of psychic powers. Only he has discovered a power that lies in all of us.
When ESP occurs in everyday life, it usually occurs in what we call an altered state of consciousness, such as hypnosis, dreams, or relaxation states. For this reason, when we started our investigations into ESP, we did work with the telepathic dream. In other words, we had one of our subjects sleeping in a soundproof room trying to dream about a message that was being sent to him from a distant point. At that distant room, one of our psychologists spent most of the night looking at a picture, trying to project or transmit the image of that picture into the dreams of the sleeping subject. Back at the lab, we watched the electroencephalographic machine very closely to see what types of brain waves and what type of eye movements the subject was demonstrating. when he began to produce rapid eye movements, we knew that he was dreaming.
Michael, wake up. Can you tell me what's been going through your mind now?
Yeah. I was at a circus and was laughing at a clown in a big red suit. He was making me laugh. He was very jolly. And he was holding these 3 big red balloons. And it was a holiday, Christmas or the 4th of July. That's it. That's all I think.
Okay, thank you. You can go back to sleep now.
In the experiment that you just saw, the target picture was a scene in Honolulu of Santa Claus during a Christmas party on the beach. The dream report from the sleeping subject mentioned a circus and a clown in a big red suit, therefore showing some correspondence with the festive atmosphere of the Christmas beach party. Then when the subject went on to talk about red balloons and a fat and jolly man, he's capturing some of the color and some of the atmosphere which we associate with Santa Claus. Finally, the subject does specifically mention Christmas, therefore adding an additional correspondence to this particular picture.
Want more? Okay. Here is Douglas Dean, author of the bestseller Executive ESP, and a well-known researcher into the untapped powers of the mind.
I'm attaching myself to the sensor of a plethysmograph instrument. The plethysmograph measures blood volume changes. The blood volume changes with the heartbeats and with emotional states in the body. And I'm using the instrument in telepathy experiments to see if the body registers receiving telepathic messages even when the conscious mind is not aware of it.
2 people, one a sender and one a receiver, each submit 5 names of people with strong emotional meaning onto cards. 5 more telephone book names which are neutral, and 5 blanks make up a 20-card deck which the sender looks at one at a time in random order and at random time.
And do you feel relaxed all right?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, good. Well, just to keep your mind clear, and the experiment will last about 20 minutes. I'll be back then to let you out.
Okay.
I'll just check that the plethysmograph...
The receiver lies relaxing on a bed with her finger attached to the plethysmograph and does not know what the sender is doing nor when. While this is going on, I am monitoring changes in her finger volume on the plethysmograph.
Our results show that as her heartbeat went along smoothly while she relaxed, then when a name which had emotional significance for her was sent telepathically, we note a rapid drop in volume. She was not consciously aware of any change, but her finger registered it. Since there was no way using her senses that she could have known this, we assume it is due to ESP.
Now it's your turn. While that film was being shown, I chose one of these 3 geometric shapes, and I'm going to concentrate on the one I chose. Your job will be to pick the first one that comes into your mind. Now, don't think about it or try to use logic. You just relax and pick the first one that comes into your mind. Ready? Okay, here we go. The one I was concentrating on was the triangle. How many of you picked up my thoughts? The odds were 2-1 against the correct choice, normally. Most of you correctly picked the triangle because we cheated. We flashed the triangle on the screen subliminally. You couldn't see it with your conscious mind, but your unconscious saw it all. You can see it here in slow motion. Now, we did this more to prove a point than to fool you. Many believe this is how ESP works. Tiny bits of information are gathered below the conscious level until a pattern emerges. Then the conscious mind finally gets the message. At least that's how it works on one level. We all know the experience of feeling that we have been in a strange place once before. The French call that déjà vu.
We will return.
Why is that woman screaming? Because she's drowning in a flood in 1908. This is her form of déjà vu. She's in another life. A life that appeared under hypnosis in this very room. Believe me, no fakery is involved in this, as you will see.
Feel your eyes becoming heavier, heavier. Feel yourself wanting to close your eyes with your eyes.
This is David Friedman,
heavy.
A member in good standing of the American Institute of Clinical Hypnotists. The woman we will call Susan. Susan is a housewife of no noticeable psychic powers. She is normally a quiet, unassuming, almost shy lady. She has been hypnotized only once before. It was during this hypnosis that very strange things began to happen. The producers of this film heard of it and prevailed upon Mr. Friedman and Susan to repeat the experiment before our cameras. No one knew where this would lead. The results were remarkable.
Your calf muscles and knees relax. Feel your... We are approaching a tunnel that is dark and long. When I reach the count of 0, you will walk through the tunnel. I will count from 1 to 4. At the count of 4, you will be exposed to the light. The light. You will have a very vivid impression as a light is revealed to you. Feel yourself drifting easily, comfortably, backwards in time, backwards and easily. 1 and 0 as you easily walk through the tunnel, easily and quite comfortably. 1, 2, easily. 3, as you begin to see the light, and 4. Where are you?
I'm in Wyoming.
In Wyoming? What city in Wyoming?
I don't know. I just see a sign. That's all I see. I don't know. It's Longacre. A saloon.
What are you doing there in the saloon?
Well, I take money from men for favors. That's what I do.
Do you earn a lot of money?
Not very much.
Do you like what you're doing?
Not very much. But Hilda and George?
Who are Hilda and George?
Well, Hilda's place. That's where I am. It's Hilda's place. They're nice. I guess it's better than being out on a street somewhere. Wouldn't you say that? At least it's a hindsight better than that. But sure wish I could do something else.
What is the year?
1860.
How did you get to Wyoming? Do you know?
No. I don't know how I got there. I don't know where anybody is. I just know it's old people there. A little busy place. In and out all day. Sloshing down that liquor. Phew.
Where do you live?
I live there.
Where? You have a room there?
Yeah, I have a room upstairs.
Do you have a favorite customer in the bar?
Well, Pete. Pete, well, I don't know who his last name, Pete. Gives me 2 bits. That's it, 2 bits.
2 bits for what?
Well, I told you that. I take money. I don't like it at all. I don't like it at all. But if you're going to persist on it, you going to persist on it?
Okay. What kind of man do you like?
Well, I like a very nice, gentle man who talks with me as me, not from here, from this kind of place. Do you understand me?
Yes.
Hilda's nice, though. She really is nice. And they're very good to me. I should be happy here. Oh, poor Angie.
Aren't you happy, Angie?
Well, I guess I could be a lot happy, but I guess I could be a lot unhappier. I said before that I could be laying out in the middle of nowhere. But here I am. I just guess I should be kind of lucky.
As the session wore on, Susan again entered the dark tunnel. When she emerged this second time, she exhibited mannerisms and speech patterns we had not seen before, neither in her present nor her past life.
Where are you?
In Kansas.
Kansas. Do you know what year it is?
1908.
Do you know the town in Kansas?
Houghton, Kansas.
How old are you?
12.
What is your name?
Julie.
Do you have a best friend?
Molly.
Molly.
Jameson.
Molly Jameson.
Molly lives with us. I don't know where her parents are, but Molly lives with us. She doesn't feel too well. She has trouble with her leg. So I'm with her a lot.
Does she go to school with you?
No. No, she doesn't go to school. But I help her.
I want you to come back to where we were before the flood. You will answer some questions concerning the flood. You will be able to answer them because you will have a clear picture in your mind. Julie, you're back at the flood scene now.
Oh, it's...
Where are you?
The water. It's just coming back.
What time of day is it?
Nighttime.
What time?
It's almost nighttime.
How did you get there?
We heard people. We heard so many people. Oh, it's terrible. It's just terrible. Everybody. Oh, Molly.
What's the matter with Molly?
Molly.
What's happening with Molly?
Molly's in the water. Oh, I'll have to get her. I can't. I don't see my... Ollie. Oh, please. What's happening is... first I'm walking through it. It's not too bad. But I'm so scared. It's coming up. It's just coming up, Mama. Oh, Mama. Mama.
Julie.
Mama.
Julie, why can't you get out? At the count of 3, you will relax. 1, 2, you are relaxed, free. Relaxed. Good.
Has Susan led previous lives? Only a long series of hypnotisms with her would provide the necessary details to check out her other lives. But we do know some things. There is a town in Kansas called Holton. There was a flood in that area in 1908.
We will return to...
Piece of film came from India. It was a demonstration of the yoga art of muscle control. It is an example of the powers of the mind to control the functions of the body. Here's another look at those carefully controlled stomach muscles. That has for centuries brought forth remarkable men dedicated to unlocking the mysteries of the human mind. The art of deep meditation has long been considered an important part of the potential powers of the human brain. Dr. Elmer Green of the Menninger Clinic has spent a good portion of his life scientifically studying the phenomenal ability of the mind to consciously control what were thought to be automatic body functions.
One of the unusual people we had a chance to study was Swami Rama from Rishikesh, India. We had heard that he could do some unusual things, and we asked him to perform. He demonstrated blood flow control in his hand, and then one day he said, "Tomorrow I'll stop my heart." We objected to this because of the fact that he had said it was a risky thing to do without fasting, and he hadn't been fasting. But he said, "No, I want to do it. I've never been wired up before. If I do it, now I'll know what I can do." When we still objected, he said, "I'll sign papers that say the Menninger Foundation is not responsible for my death." Well, the way it worked out, he won the argument. We didn't bother about the papers because he agreed to only stop his heart for 10 seconds. When we wired him up and put him in the lab, we found out that his heart was beating at a normal rate, and suddenly it began beating at 5 times the normal rate. And when I asked him about this, and I said, "You know, your heart didn't really stop the way we thought. I thought it was going to draw a straight line." He said, "Well, you know, when you stop your heart this way, it still flutters in there." Later on, we took this record to a cardiologist to find out what was really going on. And he said, "Well, this phenomena is called atrial flutter. And you know the heart is just fluttering in there. He happened to use the same word that the Swami used. And then the cardiologist said, the blood pressure has dropped. He is probably fainted. And by the way, what happened to this man anyway? We said, well, nothing. We took off his wires and he went up and gave his lecture.
But all that control isn't limited to the yogas. Take Jack Schwartz, for instance.
How do you go about a pain control problem from the inside? What do you do?
Well, there's a process of being non-attached.
Are you saying you look at yourself in an objective way?
Oh, yeah, totally objective. Under no circumstances subjective, because it's the subjectivity what makes, and the indoctrination we have gone through, that's what is in our subconscious mind, what tells us that we should feel pain and we should bleed and we should get infection, which interfere with the process.
You know, you said an interesting thing. You said fear, and then you said unconscious.
Right.
And what it sounds like is what you're saying is that you have to get conscious control of the unconscious. Jack discovered his ability to consciously control normally unconscious, involuntary processes when he was a boy in Holland. He has demonstrated all sorts of unpleasant things to doctors to show that the mind can control pain and bleeding. After Jack had been wired up, Judy assists Dale Walters in the control room in monitoring Jack's brainwaves, heart rate, and other physiological indicators, while Jack demonstrates pain and bleeding control. They use a closed-circuit TV to correlate Jack's movements with the polygraph records.
The calibrations are set and we're ready to go now.
Okay, we're ready to go. How about letting me see that needle, Jack? This is your weapon.
Right.
It looks like a regular steel needle. What is it exactly?
Well, it is a so-called sailmaker's needle. It is about 4.5 to 5 inches long. And as you see, it is not any special preparation on it. It's even rusty.
Yeah, it looks a little rusty.
And, of course, you are putting nicely your germs on it now, too. So before I'm going to pierce this through the arm, let us sterilize it first with my germs, too, so we get a kind of nice intermixing of germs and bacteria. And we cannot do it with... Normally, we do this on the floor with my foot to show that the body will not... take any infection, that it will throw the different foreign bodies which shouldn't go into the body are thrown off. So any time that you feel that I should put this needle through now, of course I'm going to pierce the needle really through from this point through this point, and I'm not going to look if there are any specific arteries involved or veins or capillaries involved. So I will just keep talking to you, and if you can support my arm a little bit, then we can put it right in there.
Oh,
right.
All right. Okay.
So.
Okay.
So now it is through. And we can leave it in there for a couple of seconds. Well.
It looks like it's buried about half an inch deep in your bicep.
Yes, it is really. As you see, an interesting thing again up here that comes right out of a vein here, which is kind of pronounced vein.
Out of a small
and
vein.
Here, again, by accident, I put it in a vein here too. It is as if it's.
I noticed something interesting as you're doing that. I can feel all sorts of tissue things happening inside as you're pushing it.
Yeah. Well, here again, it is not as if I'm putting a needle through my arm, but I'm putting a needle through a arm, which just happened to be part of a body which I temporarily possess in order to function through. And then again, the mind, in a non-attached, subjective way, is looking from a distance at it and monitoring the whole process.
Well, when you pull this needle out, do you want me to hold it again, or do you...
Not necessarily.
Okay.
Now it is out, and now what you could do, if you would grab the arm and kind of wring so that you don't cover the holes, so that the holes are still visible, wring it like a dish rag, and put pressure upon it with tremendous power. You can use all your physical power for that.
I could try to force some blood out of it.
Right.
I noticed that by forcing it up, I could force one little drop of blood.
One little drop, which we now, of course, just wipe off, and it stops. It stops immediately, and the hole will start closing As you see, this hole already is closed.
This one is closed. The bigger one here.
The bigger one is because we had to really wriggle our way in there to make the first contact. But if you can observe it, it is now getting smaller already, and it is closing.
When we get the records, our physiological records, I'd like to show you what they are, and we can talk about what they might mean. It seems to me from the brainwave record and heart rate record that you didn't show any significant reaction to pain. The question which comes up, however, is a question which I'm asked lots of times when I'm giving lectures. What good is it going to do me to learn how to stop my heart or poke needles through my arm?
Well, it's very logical that this question should come up. And I personally am not out to demonstrate putting needles through my arms to teach people that specific thing. But what can be taught to people is that they can self-regulate their mind-body coordination so that their physiological processes will be in such a state that they can prevent any disease.
And then there was Yogi Raj. In an experiment conducted in cooperation with Professor Ramakrishna Rao of Andhra University, Yogi Raj, after preliminary tests, was sealed in an airtight box for 7.5 hours. Normal breathing and normal metabolism could be expected to quickly use up the limited oxygen supply, and he would pass out. We felt, therefore, that he would at least have to control his emotional state in order to lower the metabolic rate of his body. We were particularly interested in his brainwave record as a clue to his meditative condition during the experiment. When we got back to the United States, Judy ran his records through the polygraph.
What we're interested in is the state of consciousness that enables this yogi to stay in the box in a reduced oxygen environment for 7 hours. We're looking at the brainwave rhythm of the yogi in the box. He's now been in the box for 7 hours. This is very clear alpha. It's a fairly high amplitude and it's a slow frequency. He has produced this alpha wave nearly continuously for the 7 hours that he's been in the box in a situation which most of us would probably be panic-stricken. Now this indicates that he's in a very quiet, relaxed mental and emotional state, and he's also in a quiet physiological state.
We will return to Beyond Belief on TNT Links.
This Memorial Day weekend, you'll see war at its worst and men at their best. Dig in for Operation TNT, beginning Saturday at 1 with Objective Burma.
Before you call this toll-free number, spend a minute with Ed McMahon.
I've been telling you about Colonial Penn Life Insurance for almost 10 years. I'm proud of that because I don't think you can find a company that cares more about folks over 50, especially those who want help in taking care of their own final expenses. They're determined to keep life insurance affordable and your acceptance guaranteed. Because of a 2-year limited benefit period, you simply cannot be turned down. They offer simple whole life insurance protection, priced in units at $6.95 a month. Many folks 50 and over don't think they can get life insurance without taking a medical exam or answering embarrassing health questions. But that's just not true. In fact, this company not only guarantees your acceptance, it guarantees your coverage can never be canceled as long as you pay your premiums. And it guarantees your benefit will never decrease simply because you grow older. That's the kind of lifelong commitment you can count on. Does any other company offer you more than this? First, there's guaranteed acceptance and affordable premiums that never increase. Add to that benefits that never reduce because of your age, plus coverage that cannot be canceled and cash values you can borrow against. You'd be hard-pressed to find a company that offers you more. That's why I urge you to call this toll-free number now. They will send you a free information package with no risk or obligation, and you'll also receive a free gift just for calling.
Call toll-free 1-800-874-0200 to receive free information and a free gift in the mail. Dial 1-800-874-0200. The call is free, and so is this handy guide to Social Security. Call now. 1-800-874-0200. There's no risk or obligation. That number again is 1-800-874-0200.
74 Gran Torino. 464-barrel police interceptor engine.
Jack Schwartz and Yogi Raj, two extraordinary men. Men who have spent years developing the unusual muscles of their minds to perform deeds far beyond the grasp of you and me. But what of you and me? Don't we possess powers that could be called upon without a lifetime's preparation? Dr. George Owen, Canada's foremost expert on parapsychology, thinks so. He's taught groups of ordinary people, just like you and me, to focus the powers of their minds in a matter of weeks. In his carefully supervised experiments, all the carnival trappings of seances and the like have been stripped away. Under scientific conditions, Dr. Owen's group proved the powers that may lie within us all.
The members of the group are regarded as perfectly normal people, or as normal as anyone can actually be. 4 are housewives: Sue, Dorothy, Andy, and Iris. Sid is a salesman, Bernice an accountant, Al is an engineer, and Lorne a designer. None of them claims to be a medium. Psychical research is just one of their many diverse interests. As researchers, the group had to be scrupulous in their approach. The first problem they had to solve was this: how to be sure that if they got physical effects, these were not due to a spirit. So they decided to make up a completely fictional character, an imaginary person with the given name of Philip and a completely imaginary biography. A week later, she narrated the story of Philip.
This is it. Philip was an aristocratic Englishman living in the middle 1600s at the time of Oliver Cromwell. He was married to a beautiful but cold and frigid wife, Dorothea. One day when out riding, Philip came across a gypsy encampment and saw there a beautiful gypsy girl, Margot, and fell instantly in love with her. He brought her back secretly to live in the gatehouse near the stables of Dittingham Manor, his family home. For some time he kept his love nest a secret, but eventually Dorothea, realizing he was keeping someone else there, found Margot and accused her of witchcraft and stealing her husband. Philip was too scared of losing his reputation and his possessions to protest at the trial of Margot, and she was convicted of witchcraft and burned at the stake. Philip subsequently was stricken with remorse. Finally, one morning his body was found at the bottom of the battlements whence he had cast himself in a fit of agony and remorse.
Oh, that's enough. He really used your imagination on that one.
The group discussed the life and character they had given Philip until they were all agreed on the details. A picture was drawn by Andy and agreed to be a true likeness of Philip. It should be stressed that though Dittington Manor is a real place, there is no evidence that anyone like Philip ever lived there. In addition, some historical errors were deliberately introduced into the story to emphasize its fictitious nature.
Oh, yes, definitely. I think you got it exactly. Especially the eyes.
In the fall of 1973, the group changed their approach as a result of reading articles by Mr. Batcheldor and Mr. Brooks-Smith and Mr. Hunt, which appeared in the Journal of the British Society for Psychical Research. These investigators had got physical effects by sitting round a table, as in the old spiritualist seances. But they created an atmosphere of jollity and relaxation. They told jokes, sang songs, and exhorted the table in a light-hearted way to obey their commands. The Toronto group adopted the same approach, singing such ditties as Lloyd George Knew My Father to the tune of Onward Christian Soldiers, playing music such as Greensleeves or Amazing Grace, and addressing questions to the table as if it really were Philip. And between sittings, objects suggestive of Philip, such as fencing foils, 17th century manuscripts, and pictures of Dittington Hall were kept. For most sittings, the same four-legged table was used. As soon as the group adopted this new approach, they got phenomena. First there came a vibration in the table. Also, raps came out of the table. They seemed to come from inside the woodwork.
Hello, Philip. Are you there?
Good morning, Philip.
Good morning, Philip. Hi, Philip. I heard you bought some more new horses.
Come on. Speak up. Let's hear some knocks.
Come on, let's get some bangs. Come on, let's get going. Have you brought Dorothea with you? Have you seen Dorothea lately? No. No. Would you like to see Dorothea lately? No. No.
Didn't you love Dorothea in your time?
No. That was too...
A bit louder, Philip, please.
Yes, we need them louder. Philip, come on, Philip, louder.
Good and louder. Good and louder.
Philip, did you like Dorothea?
That's good. Did you love
Margot?
Margot?
Oh, yes.
Yes. Say it again. Did you love Margot? Good.
Come on. Come
Then the table would actually move. It would glide over the thick pile carpet, or even rear up on one or two legs only. Attempts to reproduce this motion by pushing always failed. It was impossible to imitate the table's spontaneous motion.
The group has succeeded many times. Visitors have watched their proceedings in bright light or even joined the group at the table. It's clear that there is no possibility that the phenomena are produced by trickery. The Society's research committee, under Dr. Owen, has taken every precaution to obviate fraud and can state categorically that the phenomena are genuine and paranormal.
Upside down, up in the air, to the air, when your feet planted firmly on the ground, up in the air, to the air, up in the air, and upside down, up in the air.
We found that Philip, the imaginary communicator, will answer questions put to him by sitters or visitors. One rap for yes, two raps for no. Philip, of course, has no independent existence. He says just what a majority of the sitters happen to think he ought to say. It is a case of psychokinesis by committee. If a question has an obvious answer, the response, whether in the form of one rap or two, comes promptly and with emphasis. If, however, the members of the committee take time to individually reason out what the question means, or are doubtful as to the right answer, then the response is feebler and delayed.
Let me tell you, our resident cynics went over every frame of that film. There are no wires. There is no camera magic. That really happened. Now, Philip was an imaginary ghost, but ghosts just may be real. When a person dies, there is a weight loss of a few ounces that medical science cannot explain. Something that has weight leaves the body. It can be measured, but it cannot be found. What is it? Is it the soul? If it is the soul, where does it go? A Chicago doctor did a survey of several hundred patients who had died and been brought back through medical miracle. Many of them were angry at the medical team. Although they were separate instances, all of the experiences had a similarity. They had found death an indescribably wonderful sensation. These patients had experienced a separation from the body of a spirit-like self-entity. And that spirit hung around, gazing down at the body, trying to tell the medical team not to bother, that death wasn't so bad. But no one would listen. But there do seem to be some who listen, perhaps too well. And one of the most amazing is our next subject. He's a young English lad named Matthew Manning. And his story is so amazing, so startling, that we decided to let it unfold to its incredible conclusion. A conclusion that is shattering in its totally unassailable logic and proof.
We will return to Beyond Belief on TNT Link.
My wife, Valerie, and I were living in a modern house 5 miles from Cambridge. Andrew, our youngest child, was 6 at the time, Rosalind was 7.5, and Matthew was 10.5. The pattern of life in our household was, I suppose, rather ordinary, and the day would begin when I went downstairs to open up the fire that had been burning overnight and to draw back the curtains. One February morning in 1966, I had completed this domestic chore, and having drawn back the curtains, I noticed on the floor a silver tankard lying on its side, and this tankard was normally kept on a shelf. I put the tankard back onto the shelf, and at breakfast time asked the family if they had any explanation as to why the tankard was on the floor, and no one had. And in addition, of course, there were no signs of forcible entry into the house. The following day I repeated my routine and found the tankard for a second time on the floor. The third morning the tankard was again moved, and in addition I noticed on the dining table there was a pottery dog normally kept at the other end of the room in the centre of the table. And there was also a large vase of flowers with its water unspilled on the table in front of the place where my wife normally sat. I think at that moment I instinctively felt the explanation was poltergeist. From that time on, the disturbances in the room became more serious, but the events always took place between 7 and 20 past 7 each morning. Tables, chairs, ashtrays, cushions, ornaments would be moved and upturned, but nothing was ever damaged. 5 years elapsed, and my family began to see the earlier events in some perspective. Matthew, then 15, was now at public school, and we had moved from our modern house to an older house, this house, which had been built in the 17th and 18th centuries. It was Easter 1971, and Matthew was home from school, when suddenly all the occurrences opened up again, but this time with renewed vigor.
Well, I think the thing that sticks out in my mind most was the fact that we would go into one room and find that everything was upside down. It was as if the room had imploded and everything was thrown towards the centre. You'd find tables on top of one another and chairs overturned and everything taken off the walls, just as I've arranged this room to give you some idea of what it was like. Sometimes every room in the house was like this. As soon as we tidied up the first room, we would find the second room exactly the same. And then by the time we'd cleared the second room, the first room would be again disarranged. Beds would be stripped or turned upside down or upended. On one occasion, I even remember my sister's bed was stripped and then put half out of a first-floor window, so that there was all the bedclothes and half the bed hanging out of the window.
I remember one occasion we had a broom on the landing, and we went upstairs and found it was balanced across the banister at the top, just sort of like this, in midair. And it was exactly perfectly balanced. And we took it away and tried to rebalance it, and it was extremely difficult to do.
I remember when I was in the kitchen with my younger brother, and we were
and the trolley came towards us at quite a speed. It didn't make any noise, so we presumed that the wheels must have been above the ground. We were so scared we just ran away.
I could see no early conclusion to these events, and I was becoming increasingly concerned for Matthew's position when he returned to school. I could see that possibly he would be an outcast or victimized, or that he would be accused of stealing possibly, or that some other boy, quite innocently, would be compromised. And I was most anxious that this shouldn't occur. I remember very clearly the hastily convened meeting that I had that Sunday evening with the headmaster.
As a housemaster and a headmaster, one does meet with a variety of situations in education, but I must say that the strangest, I think, that I've ever encountered was this meeting with Mr. Manning back in the summer of 1971. My immediate reaction, rather, as an old square, was to discount a good deal of what he'd told me, and I did feel that, well, in the hurly-burly of a boarding house, of a school, the rough and tumble generally, somehow these manifestations, these disturbances, might very well not occur at all. At any rate, I was certainly perfectly prepared to try this out. Well, in point of fact, from a very early stage that term, after a day or two, disturbances did undoubtedly occur.
Well, this is the dormitory that I slept in with 25 other boys, and in actual fact, this is the very bed that I slept in. And frequently, this bed would move. You can see it's a very heavy bed, and it would move over to the beds over there.
There were lights that appeared on the wall, and the wall, if touched, was warm. There were sudden showers of extraordinary items, bits of broken glass, bits of chain, bits of cutlery, which would descend sometimes in the dormitory, sometimes in the changing room, with a cloud of witnesses. In his study, the radio or the record player would get mysteriously switched on or off by no apparent human agency. Books would move and so on. And I think we were all satisfied that something quite inexplicable, rationally, was happening.
I was in the same dormitory as Matthew, and we had some very unusual experiences happening. I remember one boy in particular was very frightened of all these things that were going on in the dormitory, and he took a Bible up to bed with him, hoping that this would protect him from what was going on, keep all the knives that were being thrown at everybody at bay. It didn't seem to do much for him. It just seemed to aggravate the situation. He seemed to get more of these knives and forks and so on thrown in his direction than anybody else did. These knives and forks used to come flying at us from all directions. They never used to hit us, so although they frightened us at first, afterwards we began to just take it for granted that they would miss us by inches.
The domestic staff, which were engaged to come and clean the boys' dormitories daily, always used to start their work after the boys left their dormitory at 8 o'clock, and thereon they were not allowed to go back in there again. And the staff came to me, not once, but several times, to say, "Matron, it's at it again." And I'd go back to the dormitory and find a chair across the door one couldn't enter. Beds had been twisted and mattresses upturned, and such phenomena.
I stumbled across a way of stopping the poltergeist purely by accident. About the time when this poltergeist activity was going on, I was writing an essay. I don't know, I can't even remember what it was about. And I had my hand just poised slightly above the paper, and I was thinking of what to write next, because I couldn't think of anything. And I must have gone off into a daydream, and my hand suddenly went down, and I started scrawling across the paper in an illegible and incoherent writing which didn't make any sense. And that surprised me, and I didn't know what had happened. And so I ripped up the piece of paper, I think probably because I was frightened more than anything else. And then I noticed that for about 3 days after that had happened, we had no poltergeist activity at all. And it seemed that I had to empty my mind as completely as I could. And then, when my mind was almost completely empty, my hand would start moving. And it would write in a handwriting that wasn't my own. And I kept doing this automatic writing, and this was eventually what stopped the poltergeist activity.